Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to Sunny Side of the Dome. I'm your host, Karen Soutar, and I'm here to talk some Blue Jays baseball with you for the next half hour or so. Sunny Side of the Dome is brought to you by Jays from the Couch. We stream live Thursdays at 6 p.m. And now, if you haven't heard, in the off season, we've gone to an every other week schedule. There's not a lot going on, at least not yet. And we want to make sure that when we are with you, we bring you quality content. But you can find us at 6 p.m. live on Jays from the Couch's Facebook, Twitter page, or YouTube channel. And if you are following along live and you think of a question or comment, please do send them on in. I love that interaction with the audience. I think it makes the show just that much better. And if you're not tuning in live, but you still want to see what I have to say this week, then no problem. When you're ready for us, we're ready for you. You can catch the archive version on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and now you can download as a radio podcast. So lots of ways to check us out. And if you like the content here at Sunny Side of the Dome, there's lots more where that came from. There's Jays from the Couch's main podcast. That's Mondays. So for the time being, every other Monday. Got one coming up this coming Monday, and hosted by Shaun Doyle, who's always got lots of great stuff to share. And the other show, which is the On Feck Circle, that's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. and hosted by Steve Feck, who's also got lots of interesting stuff, very, very unique individual, lots of experience doing different things, and he'll make you think about things in a way that you probably haven't up until now. At least he has that effect on me. So check it all out if you haven't been doing so up until now. And so happy Thursday evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? I hope all is well in Blue Jay land, or as well as it can be. I know some people are still feeling the sting of the abrupt and honestly somewhat unexpected way that our Blue Jays were bounced from the playoffs after a minimum of 2 games in that first round series. I know there are people out there that's, for them, it's just too soon to even talk about the Jays, think about the Jays, and that's your choice. Each of us has to cope in the way that suits him or her best. Myself, I'm very sorry about what happened. It's going to hurt for a long time. At this point, it's a part of their history, and there's good and there's bad. They finally made it back to the playoffs. Unfortunately, what happened in the playoffs wasn't so positive, but I really feel that it's something for them to build on. I think they're going to get better in the future, and we'll see about that. I think next year is going to be something special, but there's a ways to go before we get to next year. So plenty to talk about, and be with you in just a moment. All right, so just before I get to leading off, so last time I led off, I did mention that there was a transaction, so to speak, that Nate Pearson has gone down to the Dominican Winter League, and he's pitching there. They want him to get some work and hopefully build back up to somebody who can help the major league team. So he's been there for a while, pitching out of the bullpen. He's gotten into 5 games. Each outing has been 1 inning long, and he's yet to give up a run or a hit for that matter. And only 1 walk. He has 4 strikeouts. So cautiously optimistic. Don't want to jump back in onto the Nate Pearson for franchise savior bandwagon or anything just yet, but fingers crossed that he can still be something, that he can still help the Toronto Blue Jays win some games. So leading off, as you know, leading off is usually the time for transactions, and there aren't that many transactions just because right now, until the end of the World Series, and I think a couple of days later, that there is a freeze on external transactions. So the Blue Jays can't sign any free agents yet. They can't make any trades as of yet. They could announce some contract extensions, not necessarily expecting that. I'd love to hear that. Bo, Vlad, Manoah, even Teoscar Hernandez, maybe. Is any of that forthcoming? We'll have to see, but hasn't happened as of yet. But a pretty big transaction was announced a few days ago, and it was the hiring, well, the permanent hiring of manager John Schneider. So, as we all know, Charlie Montoya was let go during the season, and they needed a manager because they're in the middle of the season. So, they promoted Major League coach John Schneider to interim manager. And so, obviously, after the season ended, they needed to do something. They needed to hire a permanent manager, and Ross Atkins was non-committal. If you watched his end of the season press conference, he did make a comment that, well, it would be hard for us to find someone better than John Schneider, but they were not, as of yet, ready to announce a hiring, be it Schneider or anybody else. But it ended up being Schneider, and actually something, in my opinion, that I found a little bit interesting, and I don't know if any of you share this, but kind of interesting that in watching, and I'm still watching the MLB playoffs, I always do, whether the Jays are there or not. I kind of got in the habit for all of those seasons in a row that they weren't there. But so the Cleveland Guardians, they were eliminated. And then a couple of days later, it was reported that John Schneider and the Blue Jays had come to terms on a contract, so dropping the interim label, and then by a couple of people that not necessarily official sources, and I don't know about you, I wasn't sure whether they were reliable or not, but then the very next day, it was officially announced. So John Schneider is now manager, no longer interim manager. It's 3 years guaranteed. So 23 through 25, plus a club option for 2026. So myself, I wondered if, because we all know that Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, before they were with the Toronto Blue Jays, that they were employed by Cleveland before they changed their name to the Guardians. And once the Guardians were eliminated, that meant that manager Terry Francona, that he was no longer under contract. So I wonder if they were waiting until Cleveland was eliminated to approach Terry Francona and see if he had any interest in managing the Blue Jays. In any event, if that did happen behind the scenes, he must have said no, because he has re-signed. He's now got a new contract with the Guardians, and John Schneider is with the Blue Jays. And honestly, I think it's a fantastic choice. I'm really, really happy about this. So we're reminding a bit, going back a bit over the Blue Jays' fairly recent history and their managers and so forth. As we all know, John Gibbons, he was the manager. He had two tours of duty as the Toronto Blue Jays manager. And after the 2018 season, when the job was vacant, there were two guys, and I tweeted about it several times, that I was hoping one of two guys would be their next manager. John Schneider was one of those two guys, and that for me was based on his success as a minor league manager in the Toronto Blue Jays system with the Fisher Cats. He was the manager that won that championship with that just silly talented team as far as a minor league team went. And I felt that that success could translate into success at the major leagues. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering who the other guy was, Stubby Clapp. But I had no idea who Charlie Montoya was. He ended up being the manager for a few years there, but they did bring Schneider up to the major leagues as a major league coach, and he got that experience. So a bit about the Blue Jays history and my feelings about it in terms of their managers. So John Gibbons, I know that he is phenomenally popular with a lot of Blue Jays fans. He's an interesting guy. He has a very unique way of looking at life, of expressing what's on his mind. I think a lot of people get a kick out of that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Additionally, over the years that John Gibbons, was the manager of the Toronto Blue Jays, I came to respect the way he treats people, the way he managed people, the human element of it, because that is a part of it for any person who's any manager of people, whether that be in professional sports or any occupation, that you have to be able to deal with people. And I think Gibby was very good at that in a lot of ways that people who are on the outside might not even notice or be aware of. My own personal opinion, and I know not everybody shares this opinion, but that's fine. I never liked John Gibbons as a strategic manager. I know he guided the team, so to speak, to two playoff appearances, back-to-back appearances in 2015 and 2016. In my opinion, they got as far as they did in those seasons in spite of John Gibbons' managerial moves and not because of them. I think they did well because of the players. They had a lot of talent on that team. Alex Anthopoulos went out at the deadline and made some good moves that needed to be made, and they just took off. It looked like they were unstoppable. Unfortunately, they weren't quite, but that's my opinion. I can think of a number of moves that John Gibbons made during games that I was sitting there watching thinking, what the heck is he doing? That's not going to go well. And to the surprise of almost nobody, I feel, they didn't go well. They backfired and the Blue Jays lost the games that I'm thinking of. I'm not going to take up the whole show going over those in detail, but believe me, in my opinion, they were there. So he was replaced and Charlie Montoyo came aboard. Again, I really knew nothing about Montoyo before it was announced that he was hired. And then I tried to find out as much as I could with him. So he spent several years as a manager in the minor leagues as well in the Tampa Bay Rays system. And just as John Schneider had a lot of success with the Blue Jays, Charlie Montoyo had a lot of success as manager in the Rays system. So he had that going for him. As well, he had spent the last few seasons prior to being Blue Jays manager as a coach in the major leagues for the Rays. And it kind of seems like that's a path that a lot of major league managers end up taking. So they manage in the minor leagues, then they come up to the major leagues, but as a coach, and then those that are fortunate and have some good success, they can go on to be major league managers. It's not necessarily a set in stone. Everybody does this, but I mean, it happened with Charlie Montoyo, and now it's happened with John Schneider. So with Montoyo, there were people who questioned his in-game moves. Myself, I thought he was a pretty decent strategic manager. I really felt that when the Blue Jays lost games, that it wasn't so much because of moves that he made or anything. It was just the players that they were not succeeding, and that's how I felt. And when he was let go, I really questioned it because the Blue Jays, even though their record in hindsight, it wasn't all that good. It was 46-42, certainly not what people expected coming into this season. But I felt, I mean, they were holding down a playoff spot. And again, I felt like he was being blamed for, at times, the shortcomings of the players, that they would go out there and they weren't, what they were doing wasn't going all that well. And unfortunately, he got the blame for it, at least I thought some of the time. And put a bookmark there. I'll be right back. So yes, Montoyo was let go in the middle of this past season, and I thought about it and I heard the comments that were being made without going into a lot of detail. People talked about accountability, and I can't help but wonder, I kind of feel like John Schneider, who is now the manager, that maybe he was a little better at that. Maybe Montoyo was too nice, too easygoing for his own good. I don't know. Maybe he'd let certain things slide that really shouldn't. And I kind of feel like maybe John Schneider was a little bit better at addressing things in the clubhouse behind closed doors where they really should be. I mean, if there are issues, do us, the fans, really need to know about what's being said? We want to know about our team. We want to know about wins and losses and that sort of thing. But I mean, if I had a bad day at work, Would I appreciate my boss coming out in the middle of the office and letting everybody know about it? No. Better to keep it in-house. But I really liked what John Schneider did and has done so far with the Toronto Blue Jays. I like his strategic moves as opposed to Charlie Montoyo, who I don't think he made bad moves, but he didn't do a lot. Once the lineup card was made, I didn't see him doing a great deal that actually contributed to wins between the white lines. John Schneider, once he had the reins, he did some interesting things, and some of the time they would backfire, but I think more often than not that he actually helped the team and helped guide the team to wins as much as possible. They did very well under his leadership. They were, and it's been said many times, 46-28 was the Blue Jays record under John Schneider. That winning percentage, had it been for a full 162 games, would have been 101 wins. That is something the Toronto Blue Jays have never done in their 46-year history. So I think that's darn good. Now, would they have had that record had he been at the helm for all 162? We don't know yet. We won't know until next year, and we see what he can do. But to me, there is something about John Schneider. When I watch him, I look at him, I listen to him, I see where he carries himself and conducts himself, and to me, it conjures up leader visions and feelings of someone who is a leader, who is in charge in that clubhouse. And I think he's got their respect. And I'm really looking forward to next season, in part because he is now the manager, no more interim. And I'm excited by it, as you can probably tell. So all the best to him and to them going forward. And excuse me just a second before I go forward. All right, so on to the heart of the order, although that was kind of part of the heart, I have to say. So the Blue Jays are in the off season. I don't know if they're watching the World Series or if they're just doing their own thing. I mean, the World Series hasn't started yet, obviously, that's tomorrow, but the rest of the playoffs leading up to the World Series, or if they're just off doing different things, decompressing. Kevin Gosman posted a picture on Twitter a few days ago, looked very scenic. I think there was a lake in there, and well, whatever they're doing, they've worked hard, they've earned their time off, and they'll be getting back to it soon enough, whether it's off-season workouts, getting ready for spring training, and it starts in February with the workouts and all of that, and then games at the very end. Oh, and George Springer, he had surgery on the elbow this past week. They commented on it. The news is out there. So he did have a bone spur in the elbow. I don't know if it was ever officially commented on during the season, but it was kind of one of those worst kept secrets. Excuse me. So honestly, George, all the best to you. I really, really hope he can come back 100% healthy for 2023 and beyond. He really is a terrific player, and I'm very excited by the prospect that he will be completely healthy. Knock on wood 100 times or so. And yeah, really hope all of the guys are healthy, obviously. So what happens going forward? I see the last few years as a progression. It doesn't always happen like this, but in the Blue Jays case, I really do see a steady progression. So 2019, they had like a huge number of rookies. I remember close to the season, they took a picture of all the rookies wearing different costumes. Hopefully everything was voluntary and nobody felt bullied or anything like that. But yeah, there was just this picture. And there were so many of them, I've lost count of how many there were. That was when the official rebuild began in 2019. 2017, 2018, they were still trying to win, trying to recapture some of that glory of 2015 and 2016. They just didn't succeed. 2019, they pulled the plug, they reset, they went with a lot of young players. A lot of them are still with the organization. A few have moved on, and that's fine too. But yeah, from that rebuilding season in 2019, which didn't go well in terms of their record, and everybody knew that would be the case, to 2020, getting back to the playoffs, even though it was expanded playoffs and they kind of did look overmatched, but still, it was a huge step forward from where they had been in 2019. 2021, 91 and 71 record, coming so close, missing the playoffs by one game. And then this year, getting in, they were the first wild card team. They clinched that spot with a few days left in the regular season. By the time they played those games in Baltimore, there were a few games at the end of the season that literally meant nothing to the Blue Jays in terms of the standings, that they couldn't move up and they couldn't move down. They were the first wild card. They were going to host that series, versus the second wild card team. And I had a bad feeling about the Seattle Mariners during the season for some reason. But anyway, that's all water under the bridge now. So the question is, what do the Toronto Blue Jays do in order to move forward at this point? They have most of their roster either under contract or team control, so they can keep almost everybody, assuming that they do choose to do that. So the big player that is eligible for free agency that we all know about is Ross Stripling. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. Do the Blue Jays value his services enough to extend him a qualifying offer? That would be a heck of a raise for Ross Stripling. It would only be for one season, but they would have him back should they extend him the QO and should he accept it. So they can do that, or they can re-sign him, or he might go elsewhere. A lot of people seem to think that he's pretty much gone at this point, and that'll be too bad if they lose Ross Stripling, because he was a big part of the success that the Toronto Blue Jays did have in 2022. But you know what? If he does go out elsewhere, excuse me, if he does go out there and sign elsewhere, then I'm confident that the Toronto Blue Jays will find a way to replace him, and replace him with someone of quality. Do you remember roughly a year ago when people talked about they had a big three as far as free agents? There was Marcus Semien, there was Robbie Ray, and there was Steven Matz. And there was speculation which ones, if any, would end up re-signing, and it ended up none of them did. And a lot of people worried that, you know what, they've lost too much, and they're not going to get to the playoffs. They're going backwards instead of forwards. And you know what? I had faith, because I have come to believe in this front office. It's not that they never make mistakes. Overall, I really think that a lot more of their moves have been positive ones than ones that really didn't work out the way that they thought and hoped that they would. And I'm sure they're casting a wide net, and they're going to augment. I think they're going to bring in at least one starting pitcher. Myself, I'd rather see a quality replacement for Ross Stripling if they're going to lose Ross Stripling. And I really think that they need a fifth starter who can give them more than they got this past season. I would like to believe that Yusei Kikuchi is that guy. He's under contract for 2 more years. After what we saw from him this past season, I don't want to pin their playoff hopes on Yusei Kikuchi. And they took him out of the rotation in the middle of August. He pitched in relief the rest of the season, did reasonably well. His last 4 outings were scoreless. And for those modern day baseball fans, and I know there's a lot of you out there who are very enamored of pitchers with high strikeout totals, especially relief pitchers, his strikeouts for 9 innings were ridiculous. I think it was 16 and a half. That's insane. Yusei Kikuchi has a good arm, but he is someone they needed or need to find the right ways to utilize that. If he has found something, then it'll be a really great thing if somebody who's already in-house can actually be an asset to them in 2023 rather than a liability. But the 4 pitchers, and I still put Jose Barrios in a positive category, even though he got hit pretty hard, even though when he wasn't good, he was either, in my opinion, pretty good or he was terrible and there wasn't much middle ground. But to me, I still look at him in a mostly positive way. I absolutely want him to bounce back after this season, and I believe that he will. But yeah, I've got him in the good category, as well as obviously Ross Stripling, Alec Manoa, who was an all-star, Kevin Gosman. I mean, those guys for the most part were really, really good, and they helped the Toronto Blue Jays win games. Now I know that there's more to wins and losses than what the starting pitcher does, obviously. It's getting enough runs scored, it's having good defense behind you, it's having a bullpen that doesn't cough up saves when you hand it over to them. But when one of those four pitchers started a game for the Toronto Blue Jays, their record was 46 and excuse me, no, that was the record under John Schneider. Excuse me, pardon me. Let's rewind that a bit. When one of those four pitchers started a game for the Blue Jays last season, their record 76 and 42. That's an even better winning percentage than there was overall under John Schneider. That would have been on pace for 104 wins. That's phenomenal. On the other hand, when anybody other than one of those four started a game for the Blue Jays, they really didn't play well overall. They were 16 and 28. So there were different starters. Hyunjin Ryu before he had the Tommy John surgery, Yusei Kikuchi, Mitz White, Max Castillo before he was traded, started a few games, Casey Lawrence, and they had some openers and so forth. I really think that it would behoove the Jays to go out there and get a fifth starter, someone, not necessarily an all-star, that would be great too, but somebody who can keep them in games. Somebody who, and this to me, I see a real domino effect with the bullpen, that if your starting pitcher is that bad that he's just not keeping the team in games, and the manager says, you know what, I got to get you out of there, I got to get someone in there, then to me, the bullpen is really being overused. And I'm actually in the process of compiling the data. And so far, when the Fab Four, as I call them, started games, the bullpen put in a lot fewer innings on average than they did when anybody else started games. And I think that's what happened. A lot of people complain about the Jays bullpen, and they had their ups and downs, but to me, a lot of that was there were just too many bullpen day games during the season, too many games where, either by design and planned ahead of time or not, that the bullpen really got overused and overworked, and they were burnt out by the end of the season. I mean, I'm not surprised. If anything, I'm impressed that in game one, the bullpen gave up no runs. It was in game two that unfortunately they coughed it up, and well, the rest is history. But I'd like to see them add two quality starting pitchers, one very good, and maybe 1 to 2 bullpen pieces. And as far as the position players, maybe they'll make a change or two. I kind of feel like that would be a luxury, and that's something that they don't necessarily need in order to move forward and go as far as they can go. But we'll see. We'll see once transactions are officially allowed what they do end up doing, and I think it's going to be good moves. So, excuse me just a moment. Well, that's almost all the time that we have for this evening. So that brings me to Through Blue Jay Colored Glasses. So looking back at the season that was, we came into the season with a lot of high expectations, and even though the results in the playoffs were not what had been predicted by many people, what a lot of us were hoping for, I still look at the season overall as a positive step forward. I think the Blue Jays have made some real strides. I mean, you look at the top three, the finalists, they call them, for some awards. So in terms of Gold Glove, the defense overall was solid. We've got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Matt Chapman, Whit Merrifield, Jackie Bradley Jr., and Jose Barrios each finished top three in the Gold Glove in his position. And there's a couple of more players, honestly, between Santiago Espinal at second base and Alejandro Kirk behind the plate. Either or both of them could have been as well. So there was some really good things happening defensively, offensively. Six Blue Jay hitters made the top three in terms of finalists to win the Silver Slugger. So once again, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And Matt Chapman at third base, Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, Bo Bichette at shortstop, and George Springer and Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield. So there is so much talent on this team, and I'm expecting one or maybe both of Manoah and Guzman to get some votes for the American League Cy Young. Neither of them are going to win. That'll probably be Justin Verlander. But there's just so much talent on this team. I know they're going to augment. They're not going to blow it up. And I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen. And please, please, everybody try to stay positive until bad things happen. If they do, I really feel that it's best to try to look at the bright side and the glasses half full. That some people are just so prone to this negativity bias that if two things happen of roughly equal importance and one is positive and one is negative, for some reason so many people pay so much more attention to the negative. I really think it can bias people in the wrong direction. So please don't be unrealistically negative. Try to look on the bright side. Try to stay optimistic. This management team knows what they're doing, and they're going to keep adding. And 2023 is going to be a special season. I can't wait for it to happen. In the meantime, we've got a winter to get through, but hey, the seasons, they change and all of that stuff there. So on that note, that's all I've got for you this evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's go Blue Jays. See you in a couple of weeks.